Momentum has just kind of been a fickle friend for Billy Napier since he took it for Florida, and all the good praise we've heard about strength and conditioning. And look, some of that's natural. Anytime there's a strength and conditioning change, it's pretty positive anyway, just by the nature of the beast. But there was a lot of momentum coming around Craig Fitzgerald and what he was doing this foundation phase for Florida. And then right before the Super Bowl kickoff, we get, hey, he's leaving, by the way. He's going to Boston College with Bill O'Brien. And of course, on the surface, it does not make a whole lot of sense to leave Florida for Boston College. And it may not make sense to you no matter the situation anyway. But like, it doesn't happen if Bill O'Brien takes another head coaching job in, say, Texas or Kentucky or Tennessee or anywhere in those states. But with Fitzgerald just leaving the Boston area with New England and Bill O'Brien going to Boston College, Fitzgerald's kids grew up there. His wife is from the Northeast as well. So it makes a whole lot of personal sense, even though it kind of just stinks for Florida. And look, I know some of you don't really care for the excuse. It's Florida lost a strength and conditioning coordinator to Boston College. But, I mean, I'm not trying to make light of it, but, you know, you can see the personal situation Fitzgerald finds himself in to make that move. I mean, Will, if I had a chance to work with you and we had been working together for so long, like we have, and, you know, some weird scenario comes up and I'm on a job for 5 weeks, but you offer me some job, we get to work together again, I'd think long and hard about it. And you know, so the personal aspect you can see, but man, it does stink that if it was going to pay off like we all hoped it would, and everything that we were hearing from Trayon Webb, and, you know, a couple weeks ago on Gators Breakdown, and Joey Slackman talking to Florida Victorious and Bob Redmond and saying how much he loved the strength and conditioning program so far as well. This one does sting a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think in many ways there's no reason why whoever takes over can't continue what Fitzgerald had started. The plan should already be in place,
Yeah.
and whoever they put in that position should be able to carry through that plan. Obviously, the strength and conditioning coach is critical because he's one of the guys who's allowed to have contact with the players when the other coaching staff is not allowed to have contact. So those guys sort of drive the improvement, but drive the development, but also sort of drive, or at least can get a gauge on when a guy's disengaged, when a guy is starting to drift, those sorts of things. So in many ways, it's a relationship job more than it is just a strength and conditioning job. You know, I am a little bit worried that we'll get back to like vigorous stretching and those sorts of things that the players were talking about before Fitzgerald took over. But look, I think Florida saw at various times on the field last year that they got out physicaled. There's a reason that they decided to make a change from Mark Hawk to Craig Fitzgerald. And so they're going to have to figure it out. And I mean, yes, the fact that he goes to Boston College stinks. The fact that he decided to leave for what we would consider a downgrade in the job, yeah, that stinks. At the same time, I understand exactly what you said, right? Is that when you know someone and you trust someone, that tends to trump just, hey, I got a high profile job someplace. And you know, the job security aspect of this can't be ignored either, right? I mean, with Napier being on some form of a hot seat, regardless of whether you think it's really, really hot or somewhat hot, you're not talking about a ton of job security in Gainesville. You go and join Bill O'Brien, you got 3 years of job security, right? Every college program, when they hire a new coach, essentially you're committing to 3 years. So he gets 3 years in a location that he's comfortable with, that his wife's comfortable with. The pay is probably pretty close because it's not like they're paying strength and conditioning coaches like they are offensive coordinators these days. The pay is probably pretty comparable, and you get to live where you want. I get it. At the same time, this is like, you know, Florida, if you're able to turn it around, is a stepping stone to something bigger and better, whether it's in college football or whether it's in the NFL. And honestly, I mean, Florida used to be the thing that was bigger and better. Now we're sort of a stepping stone to what's bigger and better. And apparently Boston College is more of a stepping stone than Florida is. That's tough to swallow, but that's sort of where we are. And I don't think you get anywhere by ignoring where you are. You have to acknowledge the reality and then go, what are we going to do to change it? And there are a lot of different things that you can do, but the first thing you need to do is nail the next hire that you bring in for this position and make sure that people understand that you're going to support the people who are coaches in that position and that you're going to make it worth their while if they come down to Gainesville and decide to help turn this thing around. And we'll see where they go from here. But yeah, it stings. I mean, obviously, Fitzgerald was one of the guys that they brought in early on and said, hey, this is going to be somebody who changes the tenor of the program. And for him to leave after 5 weeks does speak. I mean, it does make me wonder. We talked about recruiting this entire episode and convincing 18-year-olds or 17-year-olds to come to your program. And if you're struggling to convince the strength coach to stay at your program, what does that say about your ability to keep those 17 and 18-year-olds?
I put it like this. I had some feedback when I tweeted the message from Fitzgerald and Napier last night. And a lot of the feedback was, well, Florida was Florida. This doesn't happen. Well, I was like, well, Florida is Florida. He doesn't get hired in the first place. I mean, the change was made because of, because Florida's not Florida. He's here because Florida needed to make a change there at strength and conditioning. And so, yeah, I mean, look, guys, Florida's not Florida. We know that. And that's something Billy Napier's got to dig a hole out of right now. And one way you do that, what we talked about this episode is recruiting and hopefully keeping some staff members that you want to keep around. But yeah, I mean, that's the path. That's what we want to get there. But Florida, yeah, right now is not the Florida that we want it to be. So
it'd just be nice to take a couple of steps forward without taking a step back and getting kicked in the nuts. It'd really be nice.
Yeah, man. I mean, beat Utah, we'll lose to Kentucky. Beat Tennessee a couple of weeks later, get your brains beat in by Kentucky. I mean, it's just. You had first season going into you had those 2 wins against, who was it? Texas A&M
and
oh wow, geez,
we're both blanking. It was South Carolina. They beat Rattler.
Yeah, and then lose to Vandy and FSU last year. Feeling good going into the Georgia game, only to lose 5 in a row. I mean, this momentum has just not been Billy Napier's best friend so far. And even the recruiting class last year had all the recruiting momentum in the world and start the season and it goes awry. So had some strength and conditioning momentum here and it all comes to an end 5 weeks later. So.